Welcome back, and I do believe we are at episode 22, if my memory serves me correctly, and I'm being told yes it is. Okay, today again I got another star, another young up-and-coming rock and roll blues star, really, but a little bit of rock too. Let's go into his bio a little bit. For me, playing the blues is all about expressing emotion, says guitarist and vocalist Seth Rosenbloom. He insists, what's always drawn me to the genre is the fact that it's always for an extraordinarily wide range of emotion that I think is the key to making great music overall, and great blues in particular. Rosenbloom knows of what he speaks. Hailed by the Boston Globe as a searing blues rock guitarist, and the Noise Boston as a musician who makes his guitar growl and has a voice to match. He's been compared to a slightly younger and rawer version of Matt Schofield, and I don't even know who Matt is, so maybe you can tell me about that. By the Blues Power blog, which also praised him for his gravelly forceful vocals and string guitar work. And I want to talk about your vocals because I'm hearing Joe, I'm hearing Robin, I'm hearing a bunch of guys there. Influenced, but totally a cool kind of unique take on it. Those assessments were affirmed this past year when Rosenbloom made his bow with his debut album, self-titled. That was probably last year, right? 2018?
2000, no, actually, well, the EP was 2018, or right. 2017.
2017.
And then the full length was 2019.
And that came out January 2019, Keep on Turning, which I've been listening to all week, and it's just a great album you should listen to. I still call them albums, as a matter of fact. He shows, again, why he's been referred to as the future of blues guitar. And, I had Baxter Hall, again, that same sort of category, a couple of weeks ago, and I'm loving meeting and playing with these young, up-and-coming guitar players. An assertive and authoritative artist and auteur, he demonstrates confidence and credence with a set of songs that sounds every bit like a new set of standards. He executes the material in ways that are both riveting and embracing, with his dynamic delivery ensuring an emphatic impression. Throughout the album, Rosenbloom commands center stage with able support from Travis Carlton on bass, Robin Ford, and Scott Henderson. Some major,
Travis has played with
I just really
them.
got into Scott recently, and we'll talk about that. And Travis Carlton is on bass, and that's not Larry Carlton's son. It is.
Yeah.
Okay. So I saw Larry at TCAN a few months ago, and I think
Travis was playing.
I think
with
his
him.
son was playing with him.
Yeah.
So I just noticed that Travis Carlton. Larry Carlton's my number one guy of all time.
Larry's great. Oh yeah.
Scott Kinsley, Tribal Tech on keys, and it's great that you have keys. A lot of blues I'm not hearing with keys, and keys to me are absolutely important. I noticed you had a lot of horns too. It seemed like
2 songs with horns. Right, cool. Brought in some horns as well.
And Gary Novak, who's played with a couple of nobodies, George Benson and Chick Corea, on drums. Produced by Josh Smith, another guy I don't know, so we'll talk about him. A world-renowned blues guitarist in his own right. Keep on Turning was recorded at Smith's Flat V Studios in Reseda, California. Although firmly entrenched in the blues, Keep on Turning reflects a distinct diversity in the range of sentiment as expressed in a selection of songs composed by Rosenbloom, both on his own, and co-writer Sonia Ray Taylor. I did not know that, and that's what's missing in albums these days, the liner notes, and it's almost impossible to get some of this information these days. But I love Sonia. I've seen her a few times. I've met her a couple of times. Yeah. And she's a local player, and if you know her well, Sonia, you have an open invitation. You just got to get back to me, and we'll schedule you. He also includes classic covers by B.B. King, Elmore James, and Freddie King. From the emphatic Keep on Turning and Right About Now to Drive and Determination, Crawling Back, and I Can't Help It, Rosenbloom's passion and authenticity are on display throughout the album. This album is a accumulation of everything I've aspired to musically. And again, I love it. You guys, if you're into blues, you just got to listen to this thing because The past 3 or 4 guys I've had on this, the word honesty keeps on coming out, and I can kind of tell, man, that this is honesty, and it sounds like it was recorded live. You guys all together,
Parts.
But it just has that feel to me. I really wanted the album to represent the diversity that the blues has to offer, and I'm so pleased to have worked with such a wonderful producer and a group of musicians who helped bring it to fruition. Then again, Rosenbloom's no stranger to making music. Born into a musical family and raised right here, locally here in Waltham, Massachusetts. He began playing classical violin as a child and subsequently took guitar at age 11, inspired by the music of Elvis and the Beatles, which also just kills me these days. That still young people are being influenced by the origins of rock and roll, and that's so cool. And I want to talk about this too. He earned a Performance Merit Scholarship from Berkeley at 16.
Yep.
Wow, I didn't even know you could do that there. After spending a few years as an active sideman and an in-demand clinician, Rosenbloom stepped into the spotlight with the release of his self-titled EP in September 2017. He supported the recording with a string of tour dates up and down the East Coast, demonstrating at each stop his clear commitment to his craft, his ability to enthrall his audience with his verve and versatility. Rosenbloom has further expanded his reputation by spending much of the year on the road as well, which I think, my advice is you got to do it, man. That's what you have to do these days. Introducing himself to newly enthusiastic audience, and I'd love to talk about that and tell me how young people are accepting of the blues these days. I'm not seeing that, but maybe you can prove me wrong. Whether demonstrating his dazzling guitar riffs and stinging vibrato or emoting with his soaring and sultry vocals, he brings on a distinctive power and personality to each of his performances. Now, with the release of Keep On Turning, he underscores that ability to add several specific cues to the blues. So, welcome to the show, Seth, and let's start at the very beginning, man.
Sure.
So you were sort of a geek violin player. What happened there? Were you like 3rd grade and they kind of give you an instrument?
Oh, no. This was way younger than that.
Wow.
This was, my dad was actually a violinist.
Cool.
So I started playing violin around 3.
Wow.
Just because it was always around. My parents actually met in music school. They were both violinists.
Were they Berkeley?
No. They met out at SUNY Buffalo.
Oh, cool.
And then my dad, all while I was growing up, he's retired as of a couple of years ago, but he was the concertmaster of the Boston Ballet Orchestra.
Wow. So serious highest level you get.
It played with the Pops and the Symphony. So
wow, cool.
It was always around. And, when you're a little kid, you want to do what your dad's doing. So around 3, started playing violin and played for about 8 years, I guess, before I even picked up a guitar. I started guitar around 11, and definitely a lot of that background just musically carried over. So, yeah, played quite a bit of violin, but at the same time, my mom grew up in Michigan in the 50s and 60s, so she was a big Motown fan. She was a huge Beatles fan, saw the Beatles on their first U.S. tour,
Cool.
So I was hearing the Motown, the Beatles, Elvis from my grandmother and stuff all at the same time as the classical music. And even as a little kid, I didn't really play, but had a fascination with guitar. There were a couple guitars around the house, and I had a guitar, but I was strumming on it, wasn't learning how to play. But first for me was really starting on violin.
And now when you were 11, did you parallel or did you drop violin?
Paralleled for a little bit of, I guess, started guitar actually because I saw the movie School of Rock in theaters.
Really cool.
Yeah. That, loved the movie. At that point, violin was starting to feel more like a chore. Less like something I wanted to do.
Right.
And wanted to have an instrument. It was more or less required. I have an instrument that I take seriously. So
required by parents?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Absolutely. Coming from a musical family, that
Other kids in your family?
Nope, only child.
Cool.
Got a guitar, and for probably the first, there were about 3 years of overlap, 2 or 3 years, where I played both. And
one's doing this, one's doing that.
And by 14 or so, I was just playing guitar.
I would imagine, that's what blows me away, man. So 11, 5 years later, you're getting a merit scholarship. 5 years later.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man. But again, I grew up, it was 4th grade and started legit. My first lessons were reading. And I read from the beginning, which really helped me when I went to Berkeley, because I kind of, typical guitar players don't read. And if you could read,
my reading's
you went
still
right
terrible
into the
on guitar.
ensemble. But that must have helped, though,
I found from violin the stuff that was more helpful. Of course, I had that background
Sharps,
of
flats, G clef, no.
Oh, I definitely had that background
No.
of I could read, and stuff like 3-octave major and minor scales weren't anything new. Honestly, the biggest challenges for me starting on guitar were chords, because you don't really deal with any of that playing violin, and also the right hand technique's just so different. A lot of the left hand does carry over, but it was definitely helpful having that background, but the reading is just so different. I think because I started at such a young age on violin, still
It's
to
like
this
reading.
day, yeah,
And
a
that's
lot
what
of,
symphony players are like.
and you
They
have
really-
to
it's
be
like
for that
breathing
job.
like that.
You have to. Guitar has a lot more challenges in terms of reading than violin, just because of the tuning, because of the number of strings, because of the range of the instrument. But still, if I look at treble clef, at sheet music, it makes more sense to me laid out on the violin than the guitar. I don't, honestly, I've taken maybe 2 or 3 gigs over the years on guitar where I've had to read. I've played a couple
I'm about
musicals.
the same way. The probably one of the greatest studio guitar players of all time, Steve Lukather, who's a big hero of mine.
Yep.
Know what he doesn't do very well? Read.
Yeah, it's funny. There are the two worlds of studio musicians on on
doing movies and stuff like that.
You have to,
you have to
not if you're tracking with an orchestra, if you make one mistake, you're done.
I think I told this story before on this show. I toured with the Platters, the 50s Platters, and it was just I was playing the Regal Theater, and I got called up because the guitar player didn't make it. But then I ended up doing this PBS thing with them, with the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra. And once I started playing this stuff, it's all arpeggios. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So I just make up my own, here's a C, here's an A minor. It's like, but you're playing with a symphony orchestra, right? And all of a sudden I hear the harpsichord player playing the exact arpeggios. I'm there, well, I better play the exact arpeggios.
Oh, yeah.
Now, a couple weeks ago, we had Baxter Hall on. Now, did you meet Baxter because
Yes.
your parents were in the same
colleagues
realm?
Yep.
And you both turned into these heavy-duty blues guys. Are the parents kind of gassed, saying, "Oh my God, we want a Chopin, we want a Beethoven, and we got Joe Bonamassa."
I mean, my parents were always, and have been to this day, unbelievably supportive. I think some of it is growing up in a musical family where you kind of understand from a young age what it means to be a musician in terms of the discipline, in terms of practice, in terms of you get to your gigs on time, you never show up. Some of that was just instilled, and I think probably the same for Baxter, from such a young age, where that's definitely a jumping point where I think for people without that background, you don't necessarily have that exposure as early. So huge help to grow up in that kind of an environment. But my parents were always just happy to see me pursue what I wanted.
And it's rare. Most of us, I'd say probably 80% of us, probably didn't have a really supportive sort of thing. You want to be a what? I was lucky. I got a scholarship to Berkeley also, and my father just patted me on the back saying, "Good luck with that." He was like a CPA, and and just the concept of the arts was what?
Yeah, it's a different path.
I want to talk about this a little bit later on. So you're 11. 12, you're learning the big cowboy chords, C, F, G, and that stuff. And then where does it go from there? Do you learn pentatonic scales? How did you become who you are? How did you become 5 years later getting a merit scholarship?
Well, that's a good question. The starting point for me when I picked up a guitar is I had seen School of Rock, and I actually then got the soundtrack
Yeah.
Great soundtrack because it has Zeppelin, Cream, a lot of the British invasion kind of blues
All the
rock.
stuff to turn me on as a 13-year-old.
Yeah,
Turning
exactly.
you on as a 12, 13-year-old.
Yeah. So from an early point, I have to say, starting off, I wasn't all that interested in playing rhythm guitar. Like a lot of, I think, starting guitar players, you want to solo.
You know who didn't play rhythm guitar and didn't play chords very much? Was B.B. King.
Absolutely. I wanted to learn Elvis songs because I was a big Elvis fan, and that's where a lot of the rhythm playing came from. But honestly, the soloing came more naturally, just because it was closer to what I was used to doing on violin.
Right.
So, started off learning a lot of kind of classic rock stuff of Zeppelin, Cream, all that, Sunshine
By
of Your
yourself?
Love. Yeah, I did not take
I don't know
any
if you
lessons.
saw last week was Charlie O'Neill, and he made a good point, and I agree with you, Charlie. At the end of the day, unlike most classical types, you know, I mean, I went to Berkeley, graduated from Berkeley, the whole thing. I'd say 90% of who I am as a guitar player is self-taught.
Yeah, I took some lessons around 15, 16. Right before
Really?
going to Berkeley, that was it. And most of it was self-directed. After getting into that, I kind of went through the teenage rock and metal phase of got into Metallica and Dream Theater
some of that
and
shredding stuff.
all the shredding stuff, you know, and all the kind of Guitar Hero stuff of Satriani and Vai and Petrucci and all that.
I missed all that. I just wasn't my thing.
And a lot of that I would attribute to when you're trying to learn that stuff, the amount of kind of physical technique in terms of the picking, the left hand that is needed to play the stuff is at a pretty high bar.
Right.
So if you're learning that stuff, it tends to develop pretty quickly. So really up through about 16 when I went to Berkeley, that was somewhat of a transition period, but that's the stuff I was into. I was into the shred stuff. Blues was on my radar, but not nearly to the same degree. I was always into it, but it was more at that point in the back.
So let's get into the lesson thing. So was it a local guy in Waltham?
No, it was actually the first guy I took some lessons from had played a guitar in the pit band for a musical at my middle school. So a guy up on the North Shore, Eric Clemenzi,
Don't know.
who I took, he was up in Haverhill at that
You're
point.
going
I
for
think.
Waltham as a young kid.
Yeah.
Because Waltham is famous for, I mean, there are tons. I don't know if you know the Veneria family in Waltham.
Yeah,
Do you know Ron Veneria?
Not personally, but I know some people from the.
Some, heavy duty musicians in that family. But so that went. So you were going up there.
Was
at
going
13,
up there
14 or 15?
Mostly around 15, turning 15 or so.
Thanks, Mom, because I guarantee your mom was driving, right?
Yeah, it was. He was into a lot of the same stuff as I was, of some of the more shreddier stuff and doing that.
Right,
so at that point, just wanted to mostly take some lessons to fill some gaps in terms of knowledge, just of. I wanted some of the theory background. I wanted, answers to some of the stuff
human reaction, because you are the YouTube generation. Where,
yeah, although this
show me the solo for Birthday from Beatles, and someone will do it note for note.
Oh, absolutely.
And we never had that, man.
And this was still, YouTube may have just been coming around at this point, but I was never super technology driven in terms of learning. Of the one exception to that is I was always looking up tabs at that point and learning off that, which I got away from in large part later, but was going up there for lessons and wasn't going all that regularly. I think I was usually going once every 2 weeks.
Okay. Yeah.
Sometimes once a month, occasionally
What
once
was he
a
having
week.
you do?
It was mostly I was bringing stuff in that was giving me problems and just needed direction on it.
Now, did you tell him before you went to a lesson that I'm bringing this? Because then he's got to look it up and kind of...
No, he was... I mean, Eric's a great teacher, and I mean, he's one of those guys who teaches 70 students a week or so and really does it full time. So all the stuff I was bringing him.
He kind of knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it was all within his wheelhouse of I was bringing him either John Petrucci things or Eric Johnson things or Satriani or Vai, and that was all the stuff he was into. So I was going to him for a while. Then the following summer when I was 15 turning 16, I went to a Berklee summer program, the 5-week.
As did I,
Great program.
years ago.
Got, for private lessons there, paired with Joe Stump.
Who's world famous.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
He's the metal guy at Berklee,
He's the metal guy at Berklee, absolutely. And that's the stuff that I wanted to do at that point. If I wanted the technique, I wanted the right hand, especially the right hand of how do I pick this? How do I sweep this? All that kind of guitar nerd stuff. And then ended up from there taking lessons with him at his house.
Now,
for
all
the
those guys
kind
use tiny picks that are like 3 inches wide?
Not all. No, it depends.
What do you use now?
I've become a lot less picky.
No pun
No
intended.
pun intended. Over the years, and I experiment quite a
Me
bit.
too.
I've gone
I'm
back.
constantly going. I got like this real thin one, and I got a medium Fender in my pocket.
I always use pretty thick picks. I don't like it flexing when I'm picking,
right.
Because I kind of lose track of it.
I like the flexing for rhythm, not for solo.
I generally don't, just because over the years I've gone heavier and heavier with strings.
Right.
And when you
really?
go,
What is your
12 to 54.
No way.
Yeah.
A 12. Let me see you pen that 12. Wow. Wow, man. I'm still an 09.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing of I was 10s for years, went to 11s, went to 12s, and it was all for certain reasons, tonally as well as feel on the instrument. But with the heavier strings, if you use too light a pick, it just gets chewed up. So most of the time now I'm using picks from a company down in Knoxville, Tennessee, Blue Chip, which are basically indestructible, but they're some kind of space age plastic.
Cool. Like 2.0 or something like that?
I think this is around there, a little less than that,
that's
but
heavy.
it's a pointy tip, but kind of a Fender size, and cuts through the string well, but also sticks to the finger.
Cool. And so Joe Stump, how'd that go?
Great. I mean, I studied with him for about a year right before going to Berklee, and he was sort of I wouldn't say the driving force, but the confirmation of making the leap to Berklee, because I ended up skipping a couple years of high school to do it.
How do you do that?
Well, officially you drop out of high school, and
But
then
how do you get into? Because that's an accredited school, Berklee. You gotta.
So
You need SATs and all that.
no, you do not need
Really?
SATs or ACTs. So that's one of the tricks to it. But I had gone to a really rigorous kind of K through 8 prep school growing up.
So you didn't go to the regular.
Didn't go to
schools.
public schools growing up, and ended up then at Waltham High for high school.
Which has a major music program.
Yeah, at that point I was still more into baseball than I was
Really? Because
music.
I told you
and
about
large-
Veneri. Ron Veneri. He runs the. I don't know what you call it. Some sort of jazz band thing.
Didn't do any of that there. I was really, at that point, I was doing all the music that I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it outside of school.
Right.
And I was spending as little time as possible in school. And
Let me guess. You were a second baseman.
no, I was a pitcher.
Yeah, I was going to
was
say
pitcher.
pitch a second.
Always like being in the spotlight. I
Right,
guess. But coming off that K through 8 prep school, I found that at Waltham High, I had done most of the coursework and tried to skip a grade, all kinds of things that wasn't allowed for whatever reason.
It's just because that's the world there, and it's
Right.
like you go a path.
Have to
that's all
do
there
the
is to it.
MCAS and all that. So ended up to do it having to drop out of high school around Thanksgiving of sophomore year, go take the GED to, for Berklee to basically have that you've finished high school.
So you took a GED. And
Yeah.
You can do that.
You can do it. Once you're 16, you can do it. There are weird rules where you have
Did
to
you
have
have to study
been.
for that? Was it hard?
No, it was the easiest test I ever
It's like, who's the first president of the United States?
Not even that. No, closer to 2 plus 2. But
Don't tell all the kids that. If then else, I'm skipping 2 grades.
Wouldn't necessarily advise this path, but yeah. So ended up the rules when you're 16 is the whole idea at that point. From the GED is generally designed if you can't finish high school for some reason.
Yeah, that's exactly
not
what that.
if you don't.
So
want
they
to.
make it maybe a bar lower than.
It's supposed to be about senior year, equivalency. Right. But if you are still of high school age, you have to have been out of high school for, I think, 30 or 45 days before you can even take it, where they're trying to divert you back into high school. So that's why I basically spent that year, I had to take the GED, and then I was just practicing for my Berklee audition. Doing the application. So by February of what would have been my sophomore year of high school, I was into Berklee for the following year.
Really? And who do you know who you were auditioning from at Berklee?
I have no idea. Okay, I actually don't.
Because a buddy of mine, one of the guitar professors who does that all over the world.
Actually. I actually don't think it was a guitar player
really?
at my audition. But yeah, I did a John Petrucci song for it.
Really?
And
like some heavy-duty metal thing?
Kind of a shreddy, super technical picked thing with an improvised section. I think I did well enough on the, reading portion. Not great, but I was, to prepare for that, I was just taking out like Bach etudes and reading through them because for note reading, you don't have that much in terms of rhythm with those. It's a lot of just rolling 16th notes. And did well enough on that, did well enough on the ear training where, yeah.
So September of what would have been your junior year, you started as Berklee.
Yes.
You were like this little kid.
16, I had turned 17 like a few days before.
Yeah, but still, man, even at Berklee, there are 25-year-olds who start in freshman year. Right. Yeah. So you must have been the little kid.
I believe I was
whose little brother is this?
Believe I was the youngest at the school at that point. But I always looked old for my age, so I did fine. But
I think
then
he has a baby face. What do you think?
At that point, I looked. But I spent a year at Berklee. Yeah.
So you did 2 semesters.
2 semesters.
And what'd you do there? Was it like arranging, ear training,
I
harmony?
was, on track to be a performance major, but the stuff that I really got out of it was more in terms of the harmony and the ear training, where I had some holes there, just mostly from growing up playing violin. My understanding of harmony was much more from the traditional standpoint.
But it's probably pretty advanced.
In some ways, but not if you're approaching it from a jazz perspective.
Right.
Of just the knowledge is so different. Of the melodic minor scale is not the same in terms of jazz harmony and traditional harmony.
I did not know
Stuff
that.
like that. Yeah. It was just, I definitely had gaps in terms of a lot of classical musicians aren't that familiar with modes, where that becomes a big thing, or secondary dominance and all that. That was most of what I was, spending my time on.
So you did 2 semesters.
Yep.
You're then 18, right?
Barely. 17.
So 17, what happened then? What were you doing? First of all, just to backtrack again, bands in high school. Were you doing the garage band thing?
Played in kind of
like Nirvana tunes or what?
More like a high school metal band, was doing that, and then was also writing kind of my own stuff at that point, more in the instrumental guitar rock.
Any of those guys continue on with it, or did you just continue on? Your buddies didn't play anymore.
Interestingly enough, the drummer who I was playing in that band with, his dad was in management. He's now my manager.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So
high school buddy,
Yeah, so he's very much still in the industry, but not as a player.
And I want to talk about the industry too, and make sure we touch on that. So then what, man?
At that point, I hadn't been honestly crazy about Berkeley, just in terms of some of the...
Mezzo on that, you know.
Yeah, especially in terms of the guitar department, just the curriculum and what the focus was. So at that point at 17...
Bill Levitt book, volume 1, 2, and 3. Right. Yeah.
Even aside from that, but just some of the focus there wasn't what I thought was important, and I maintain that to this day.
Cool.
But knew that there was still a lot I wanted to pursue in terms of learning, that it wasn't that I was a finished product ready to release music at that point and stuff. So I did for quite a few years a lot of just gigging as a sideman, teaching, as well as at that point I took some lessons with players that I really respected.
Anyone you can mention?
Took a lesson with Scott Henderson.
Wow. How'd you do that? I mean,
he was offering them on Skype for a while.
Right.
Took a couple with Eric Gales. So
really,
just going to players who the internet's made the world so much smaller.
It's such a bizarre world. In my day, you'd never get to that level of guitar player. You would never get to the Larry Collins of the world. And now Larry, through TrueFire, I think, you can get to Larry Collins.
At this point, you can kind of get to whoever you want.
And my favorite guitar player, the guy with, I forget his name now, John Harrington, guitar player with Steely Dan.
Yep.
You know, he's just giving lessons.
Yep.
You know.
Most people have a price. If you, you can pretty much take a private lesson with whoever you want.
Are you still teaching?
I do bits and pieces. I do some teaching for companies that release stuff online. And most of that is go into a studio, not unlike this, sit in front of cameras, record a bunch of stuff, and they package it, record it. And then I do offer still Skype lessons, occasionally in-person stuff, but that's rare. But yeah. But at this point, any of the teaching, people are coming to me because they know what I do, not just for guitar lessons in general.
They want to learn this.
Right.
Okay. So this is about 10 years ago we're talking about right now, right?
27 now. So.
You know, so 10-ish years. So you're out of the Berkeley thing. Are you doing the blues jams? What are you doing then?
That was kind of pre-Berkeley.
Seth Rosenbloom brand up there.
I started on that kind of year off between high school and Berkeley, going to a ton of blues jams, really getting more into that side of the playing. So was doing a lot of that, and it was kind of an evolution over the years of playing with different artists, seeing what I was really drawn to and felt authentic at the end of the day. And it ended up, I'd say by, through age 24 or so, I lived in Nashville a bit, I lived in Raleigh a bit. And the main...
so you moved out of here?
Yeah, the main thing I was doing for quite a while was more on the teaching side of things and the gigging with other artists. And then through a series of events around, 25, ended up moving back up this way. And at that point, really felt like I was at that point had started singing and was at the point where I was fronting the band, did the EP, and that really started down the path of doing what I'm doing now.
Did you sing before? Because you have a great voice, man. I love the tone, the timbre of your voice.
I always did at home, but it was a thing of, I was definitely a reluctant singer.
As was Joe Bonamassa.
The instrument was always almost that buffer between me and the audience, where singing, you are so at the vulnerable point there's nothing between you. And that was, I never really dealt with any stage fright or performance anxiety, but that was the biggest thing of the first time singing.
How'd you do it?
Booked a gig and decided I was going to sing the whole night.
With a bass player and a drummer behind you? Okay.
Up to that, I was doing a lot of gigs where I'd hire a singer. Doing my gig, but and blues stuff, but mostly covers, hire a singer, and decided I was going to do a whole night me singing, and it went better than expected. So that kind of, it just snowballed from there.
The story with Joe is that it was pitiful, really horrible, awful, not that bad, and just kept on going. Because this is an exercise. This is a muscle.
Absolutely.
And you gotta, and doing a whole night. I mean, you're doing. Are you doing? I want to get into where you are right now. So that's cool. So you did that.
Yep.
And you don't have to hire another guy.
Right.
So that's this business is about economics. So
Absolutely.
So you can go out as a trio. You can go out as a fourth. I mean, you don't have to get a singer. And singers have their own. I have a duo, and I work with the best female vocalists in Boston. And it can be challenging at times.
It was also a large part of starting singing was if you're hiring a singer, even if it's your gig, you still don't feel like you have full creative control
Right.
and direction over. I felt like my playing improved when I started singing because then when you're weaving, say, fills in and out of the line, you know where the vocal line is, and you know where the guitar.
You can give that space that a lot of guitar players don't.
Right.
They'll step over that sort of thing.
It's much easier in that sense.
And so bring us up to today. So you started making a name, and I started seeing you all over the place on Facebook and all the social media. And you moved back here, 3 years ago?
I guess in 2017.
Yeah, which is surprising because, I mean, Nashville is the town for
I
a
was
guy like
not
you.
in Nashville long. I was in Nashville in 2013 for a few months when I turned 21. I was mostly down in Raleigh a few years ago.
Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the musical world there.
It's a really cool town, but it at that point just wasn't what I
How'd you end
wanted.
up in Raleigh?
I had done a lot of work there from the time I was 17, 18. So it was a familiar place. I had a lot of friends there, liked the area, so that
Cool. So
led
you
to
get
Raleigh.
back here. What do you do? Do you find some musicians? Do you go back into the blues jams thing? When was the first Seth? What's the name of your band? Is it just?
It's just Seth
Seth
Rosenbloom.
Rosenbloom.
Yep.
Okay, so when did that become a moniker?
That was before I moved back here. I think around Christmas time, 2016, I was up here for the holidays and booked a show at Thunder Road in Somerville. That was the first one I was singing on, and that kind of launched it. So at the time I moved back up here, it was all about trying to locally book more gigs as well as start going out on the road and start expanding.
Cool.
It was within a month or two of moving back up here. The EP was out.
Oh, so you had the EP out. Okay.
Oh, I recorded that and released it within about a month time frame. That
Coming
was
back here.
About a month after moving
Cool.
back, went in the studio, got it out quick. It took about 3 or 4 days to do it.
And who was with you during that one?
That EP, I had Jim Gwynn on drums, Tom Appleman on bass,
Oh, yeah, he plays with my friend Jennifer Truesdale, right?
and then
Good bass
Ken Clark played organ on it.
Cool.
Did it over at Wellspring Sound in Acton. So got that out kind of as a business card.
Just to get out.
Couple
Right.
originals,
Absolutely.
few covers, and that really launched, some of the touring. I was still getting back down to kind of the southeast, having that Raleigh connection helped almost open up two fronts of having Boston as a home base and then Raleigh still as something of home base. So was doing a lot of East Coast stuff, and it's kind of just spiraled from there. It was trying to take any gig that made sense to take, play it,
And you're at that mid-level, semi-national sort of rooms, TCAN, that kind. You're not playing bars around Boston.
No. Around Boston, I've always taken the approach of trying to not do a lot of not just do volume locally,
Right.
but do bigger shows.
Yeah, I was talking to Charlie last week of the Delta Generators, and he's also in that sort of level too. And you don't want to kind of backtrack and play the bars because people start to imply it's like, well, what's happening with Seth? Is his career not doing this?
In a way, although, I'll still do, I have friends who have residencies at some bars. I'll do guest spots on those just
Cool.
because,
And that's different than-
and some of those gigs, it's because I want to do them.
Right.
And it's that balance between, if I had it my way, I'd be playing every night.
Yeah.
But it's that restraint to take the gigs that really have the power to kind of propel things forward. So locally, one of my favorite rooms is 9 Wallace up in Beverly.
And
Great
I
room.
keep on hearing about. Is that newish, that room? 'Cause I
As
just
of a
started
couple
hearing
years
about
ago,
it.
but I'm playing there coming up January 10th. I'm doing, but in town I'm doing the Lizard Lounge next week. Love that room.
Yep.
I've done the Burren back room quite a bit in town, which
What
is
a great room. I went there for my first time. It was funny. I saw Jennifer Truesdale was great. I don't know if you know her, but if you ever need background vocals, she's great for that sort of thing. But what a cool room. It's it's in Somerville, and I grew up in the Boston area, but I haven't been in Somerville in a while, and it's just very hip area. And she played like till 9. Do you play till 9?
Yeah, it's always till
sort of
9,
thing
and then
like
a
that,
cover
and
band
then
comes in.
It's interesting. Oh, is it the cover band comes in? Is that what
Yeah,
happens?
they take all the
I was
tables
wondering,
out,
'cause
and it's a Tufts bar.
It was a lot of us baby boomers who were there till 9, and then we all leave, and they're getting ready, and then all the millennials started walking in.
That's kind of the deal on the weekends there. But yeah, it's pretty much similar when I go on the road. It's a lot of some rock clubs, not many bars, but a lot of jazz clubs, listening rooms. So that's pretty universal, whether it's local or nationally, internationally.
So you start building up the name.
Yep.
And then you say, man, I want to do what looks like a real album.
Yep.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
And with major players.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So,
Well, and let me interrupt. Do a record contract?
No.
Any major labels?
Not involved in this one.
Self-finance?
Yep.
Kickstarter or anything like that?
nope, just did the record with...
Because I know how much that costs. It's real money.
Yeah, I had met Josh Smith at a workshop kind of performance thing that we were both artists on in, I believe it was spring of 2017, actually in Durham, North Carolina. So he was out there for that. At that point, he was just at the point of finishing up his studio. He has basically a separate structure, kind of converted garage out back of his house, but it's about 1,400 square feet. So
In California.
in California, LA area, where he was just finishing that up, was starting to do his own stuff there as well as take on other projects. So was talking to him there, as with a lot of the conventions, anything like that, you end up jamming late night in a hotel room, just talking and stuff. So got friendly with Josh, and by January of, I guess, 2018 at this point, I was out at NAMM in California. And
because you rep a bunch of different...
Yeah.
So that's how you... Because NAMM is supposedly just industry people.
Yeah.
So you're associated with various companies.
Exactly.
That I noticed on your website.
So was out there, got to talking to Josh, knew that the goal for 2018 was full-length record, doing that. So we got to talking, and I've been a fan of Josh's playing for years. Also a huge fan of the production on his records and just kind of his mind musically and how he thinks through stuff. I knew for the record I wanted someone producing who could have some of the real studio experience of knowing what works for certain parts.
Plus a guitarist perspective. That must...
Less so that, although that came in, it was actually more someone who could very effectively communicate to the drummer, the bass player, the organ player, exactly what was going on and have the overall vision, so that from a guitar perspective and vocal perspective, I was just able to focus on me and playing and not having to have the 360 view.
Now, did he bring in those players?
Yeah, those are the guys he usually plays with out in LA. So I did...
That's an amazing group of...
It made it easy where I did none of the hiring.
Okay.
I just flew out with a guitar, 2 guitars for the second sessions. We did them in 2 chunks. I think 4 tunes the first time, 5 tunes the second time.
Send them demos, or did you write them out for the...
Yeah, Josh, we did a half-day of pre-production, charted them all, and those guys are used to coming in blind to the studio.
And making music.
Oh, yeah, I don't think we did more than 4 or 5 takes for any tunes, and got the basics, then overdubbed a lot of the guitars, overdubbed the vocals, brought in keys, horns, all that.
Cool.
And so that was a great experience.
Cool. And so you put that all together, financed all that, probably had to pay those guys because they're serious musicians. So you get it out earlier this year, this past
January.
January, earlier this year. And then what? Did you go on the road, and now you have a manager you're telling me about?
Yeah.
So how'd that go?
I've had management in place for quite a while,
Oh, really?
so
Cool.
that's always been there. Just because we've been friends for so long, that was kind of in place from the time I was 18, 19, of
Cool.
when it was needed, it was there. And that's a thing of early on, you just don't need management for all that much. And when a contract comes in, you need it and stuff. But aside from that, you can handle a lot of that stuff on your own. But since then, the album well exceeded any expectations I had in terms of just reviews and radio charts and sales and all that.
And all that.
Absolutely.
You're getting people listening to it.
Oh, yeah. So it definitely propelled the requests for live shows. I mean, I just got back from the UK, and that was...
Yeah, tell me about how'd you get that gig?
That was actually based off a review that appeared in Blues Matters magazine.
I saw the cover. You're on the cover.
That's a different one. That was
Okay.
Blues in Britain. But there are
Cool.
two major blues magazines in the UK, Blues Matters and Blues in Britain. The album back in February or March was reviewed in Blues Matters, and the guy who reviewed it also books Edinburgh Blues Club up in Scotland. Cool. So he got in touch through my press agent about if I'd be interested in coming over there, and I kind of booked those shows just myself around, someone wants me to play over there? Sure, let's make it happen. So, it was kind of the thing of, while the offer's on the table, it would be silly not to get over there. And
who'd you bring?
I used UK rhythm section.
And you just say, listen to the album, learn this, guys?
Right, I do that a
out?
lot regionally. Oh yeah, I do that a ton.
So you're not taking guys on the road with you?
Occasionally, but if
it's a lot less expensive.
If it's a regional run, financially, it just makes more sense.
I told you, I played with the Platters, and it was interesting. I did most of some of their big gigs, went to Hong Kong and things like that, but 90% of the time, they just pick up guys on the road. Because they have the charts, and it's pretty straight-ahead stuff.
Yep.
And it's a lot less expensive if you don't have to do hotel room.
I mean, I would way rather be taking my own guys all the time.
Right.
Because you get that chemistry, and you get
Do
all
you
that.
have your own guys?
Yeah,
You have a band now that is the Seth Rosenbloom band.
No, I have my top call kind of list in town, but a lot of the guys that I use a lot have other road gigs too.
And that's the nature of the gig.
Unless you can guarantee that there are going to be 150 dates a year or so, and have them locked in and either have someone on retainer or have it pretty solid, you're not going to get the best players to commit that far out. So I have guys that I hire pretty much all the time, but sometimes they're not available.
So we have a video here we're going to show you, and can you talk a little bit about this video?
Sure. This is a live cut of one of my tunes from right before the album was released, and it was over in Norwood at the Fallout Shelter.
Cool. So here's that.
Never take for granted what you always know. Count your blessings and watch your tone. And take what you can while you're young. 'Cause as the days keep passing, lights keep burning. Try your best to stop it, but the world keeps on turning. Somebody told me when I was 12 years old, stay true to yourself, don't buy that fool's gold. Keep your head up, keep your ground and do what you want before time runs out. 'Cause as the days keep passing, lights keep burning. Try your best to stop it, but the world keeps on turning. Somebody told me when I was 21, stay true to yourself, don't forget the things you've done. Keep your head up, keep your feet on the ground. Do what you want before time runs out. 'Cause as the days keep passing, lights keep burning. Try your best to stop it, but the world keeps on turning.
So we're back here, and I had something else interesting. Oh yeah, now didn't you win some big contest for a blues guitar player or something like that in Boston?
Oh, it was the Boston Blues Challenge recently,
And how was that?
That was cool. It was that's for the International Blues Challenge, which happens down in Memphis, and it's each blues society can send a band to go compete in Memphis.
Right, so you competed against a bunch of folks around here.
Yep.
And where was that?
That was actually at the Fallout Shelter over in Norwood I think it was in October. So had that, and now in January I'll be heading down to Memphis for the International Blues Challenge. That was really propelled by my booking agent I've never been all that much a fan of any of the music competitions, but
yeah, I tend to, because art is not the 4-minute mile.
Exactly. You know? It's sort of the place to be in the blues scene where a lot of the festival bookers, the cruise bookers, are all in Memphis. So and
it helps the album.
Absolutely. And it's more, I look at it as more of showcase gigs than a competition. Whatever
now, when you played here, did you have your band, your top guys? Now, what are you going to do when you go?
With that, it has to be the same band from the local one. So I'll be going down.
We don't want to get into the economic, but I assume you got to pay. Or do they pay to fly you down there? And all
the Blues Society provides.
Oh, the Boston Blues Society.
Boston Blues Society provides some funding for it. So. Yeah, we'll actually be driving down in Memphis, or to Memphis in January. So
it'll be those guys. And is that, do you go 4-piece? Do you have the?
I usually go 3-piece. I love going 4-piece, but keys are only when the gigs pay enough for where keys come on.
And so, what does 2020 look like for you? What are you looking at? I know you got a gig in January at Nine Walls.
Yeah, super busy start. So, couple local things in January. One at Nine Wallace, one at the C Note down in Hull. Those are both actually fundraisers for the Blues Challenge down in Memphis. So doing those, I'm out in LA for NAMM and to do a show out there. Mid-January. That show, super excited about doing that with Josh, who produced my record, Joey Landreth, Matt Schofield, Art Menezes, and Adam Miller just put that together.
I saw that. I didn't understand all the names on the side, so that's what that was meant.
Yeah, that'll be a really fun show out there. Then I come back for a few days and then to Memphis. February's a Florida tour.
Cool.
So a lot of 2020 will be on the road. I know going back to the UK, probably doing Germany as well later in the year. So
Cool.
the goal is to get as many places as possible and also record and hopefully release the next record sometime in
Any
2020.
chance I could see you opening up for Joe Bonamassa or something like that? Any chance of getting those opening gigs? Joe, if you're listening.
I've done a few opening gigs and I'll take them, obviously when they come, but at this point, it's just whatever comes in through my agent, I go show up and play.
Now, what about the big Boston places? There's one like T-Can, Bull Run, the one down in Fall River. You're doing all those mid-level kind of nice Cabot in Lexington, I think.
Haven't done some of those. It's locally, I usually take the approach of just, if it's my show, I'll just pick a venue and either rent it or work it that way. Recently did the Hard Rock down in Boston.
Oh, really? Cool.
Just of central.
And so that's another
big
way
room.
of going. They have a price for the room for the night.
And if you know you can pull people in, that lets you set the ticket price.
And you got to be cool and judicious in terms of how often you play around here.
Right. I do about, I'd say, 4 big shows a year in town, and the rest of the time's on the road.
Cool. So how can people get in touch with you?
My website, SethRosenbloom.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, all of those. So
Cool.
Any of those.
Thanks for coming, man. And I was thinking A minor kind of,
Sure.
like a.